Today's lesson is Little Penguins, Big Adventures. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
I am Roger, and today we're going to continue talking about little penguins. Not just penguins that are small in size, but we're talking about a specific species of penguin. Little penguins, they're also known as blue penguins or fairy penguins, and they're very small. And we did talk about the fact that they are native to Australia and New Zealand. They live along the coasts, and they live in burrows. And also they go hunting under the cover of darkness. They hunt for fish and other marine animals.
That's right. Today we're going to be learning about kind of the second half of our title there, some of the big adventures that little penguins have gotten into over the years. I think we remember from the first day, the opening article there, we learned that penguins often make their burrows not just on beaches and sort of natural areas, but also often around human structures, around buildings and whatnot, maybe around under your home or under something built along a beach or in a coastal area. So let's find out about some of these very interesting adventures that these little penguins have gotten into.
Despite their wild nature, little penguins frequently interact with humans. One example comes from the town of Oamaru in New Zealand, where officials built a special tunnel to help the penguins reach the ocean without crossing busy roads. The passage, which required water and power lines to be redirected, keeps them safe from cars and tourists as they navigate between their nests and the sea.
大家好，第一部分介绍动词 navigate， 它的意思是穿越，但也可以是导航、航行或是确定方向的意思。例如 Using a GPS makes navigating a big city easier. 使用全球定位系统使得在一座大城市里穿梭更容易。或者The hikers had to navigate through dense forests to reach the summit. 登山客得穿梭茂密森林才能抵达峰顶。
All right, it's time for us to talk about the first part of our lesson for today. It says, despite their wild nature, or even though they are wild, little penguins frequently interact with humans. So I guess to a certain extent we could say they are kind of tame because they do interact with humans. Now, to interact just means to be involved with each other. Oftentimes, interact refers to a conversation. This does not mean that the penguins are going up to the humans' houses and saying, hey, how you guys doing in there? How was work today? Oh, well, it was kind of terrible. You know, I got in a traffic jam or whatever. How about you guys? Well, we went hunting for fish and we only caught a couple. No, they're not actually having a conversation like that. They just kind of share the space together and they sort of react to each other. Maybe they even let the humans pet them or something.
There you go. Yes, of course, you're interacting with people that you talk to through the day. But even if you go to the store and buy something from the clerk there and hand over some money and give them a smile, that's interacting as well. So it just kind of means having an encounter with, coming close to, doing something with someone. Here's an example. One example comes from the town of Oamaru in New Zealand, where officials built a special tunnel to help the penguins reach the ocean without crossing busy roads. Well, that's a nice thing to do of the locals and the officials of this small town in New Zealand. I guess it came after some unfortunate incidents where maybe penguins were waddling across the road. And as most people know, on land, penguins aren't exactly speed machines. They are definitely very fast in the water, but on land they kind of waddle rather slowly. And should a car come rushing along towards them, especially at night, the penguin might not have much chance to get out of the way, so possibly there were some accidents involving penguins, and officials and probably concerned locals who had a fondness for the penguins thought, no, we got to do something about this. So they spent a decent amount of money building a special tunnel under the road. So it's the penguin crossing, and the penguins can go under the road where they're nice and safe while the traffic continues smoothly overhead. So that's quite interesting. It says the passage, which required water and power lines to be redirected, so a bit of a local engineering job. It keeps them safe from cars and and tourists as they navigate between their nests and the sea. To navigate is to travel while finding your own direction. So you're not just following someone if you're navigating. You're actually figuring out, where am I going? Do I turn left? Do I turn right? How long do I go along this road for? We use GPS to navigate now. If you're old school, you might use a map to navigate. Or, of course, if you're in a familiar area, you'll use your memory to navigate. You know how to get around your neighborhood and where things are and which road to turn left or right on to reach the post office. So as they're navigating between their nests, their burrows, their homes on land and the sea, and remember, yesterday we learned that they're nocturnal animals. So yeah, I guess it could be that they're coming back from their hunt in the middle of the night or the early morning when the sun is still down. And yeah, that would definitely present some possible danger if they're trying to cross roads in the dark on their way home, possibly with a belly full of fish, so they're not exactly thinking straight either. So this is a great story, and it seems humans and penguins came together to make lives better and safer for both.
Right, so they probably have those little tunnels at specific intervals, and I think these penguins are smart enough to know where to go through a tunnel and find their nests on the other side. So it's a win-win situation for everybody, and the penguins continue to live happy lives, free to swim in the ocean and hunt for their prey. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's find out some more information in the next part. Let's talk about how penguins kind of get involved with humans, or how they interact with humans. Here's the second part.
In January 2024, a baby blue penguin caused a stir at Wellington Airport by wandering onto the runway, temporarily bringing air traffic to a halt. The curious bird was removed, but left a lasting impression on travelers and airport staff. Another unusual incident occurred in 2019 when a pair of little penguins were discovered under a sushi stall in Wellington. Officials had to relocate the birds multiple times before they finally settled elsewhere, much to the amusement of locals.
第二部分看到这个名词 runway 表示飞机的跑道，例如 Small planes do not need very large runways for taking off and landing. 小型飞机不需要非常大的跑道来起飞和降落，或是Our plane was stuck on the runway for nearly 30 minutes due to a thunderstorm. 由于雷雨，我们的飞机在跑道上被困了近30分钟。下一个看到名词 incident 指事件或是事故，例如 News reports often focus on violent incidents. 新闻报道常常聚焦在暴力事件。也可以说 The train is delayed because of an incident at another station. 这辆火车因为另外一个车站发生的事故而误点了。接着介绍形容词 multiple 表示多个的、多种的或是多种用途的。我们可以说 Greg has multiple tasks that he needs to complete by the end of the day. Greg 有好几项任务需要在今天结束前完成。又或者说 The project faced multiple challenges before reaching completion. 这个专案在完成之前面临了多重挑战。
Okay, so let's give you some examples now of how penguins frequently interact with humans. Let's talk about one incident that happened, about a year ago or so. In January 2024, a baby blue penguin caused a stir at Wellington Airport by wandering onto the runway, temporarily bringing air traffic to a halt. So as you know, Wellington is one of the main cities in New Zealand, and this penguin caused a stir. If something causes a stir, it causes a little bit of a problem. It distracts people. There's something weird going on, and they have to react to it. Otherwise, they might have some trouble there. So it caused a little bit of trouble at this airport because it wandered onto the runway. So if you wander, you just kind of walk around without any specific direction in mind. It was just kind of walking around, minding its own business, and somehow it got into the airport and wandered onto the runway. The runway, of course, is where the planes land and take off, and as a result, it temporarily brought air traffic to a halt. So if you bring something to a halt, you make it stop, usually quite abruptly and suddenly and unexpectedly.
Oh my gosh, I would like to salute the person with the eagle eyes who spotted a baby blue penguin walking on a runway. I mean, runways are really big, airports are really big, and as we learned, adult blue penguins are about 30 centimeters tall. So imagine a 15-centimeter high little bird wandering down a 3-kilometer-long runway or something, and someone up there in the control tower or maybe a pilot was like, hey, there's a penguin on the runway. And so, yes, of course, if there's a person on the runway, an animal, anything like that, they will stop landings and takeoffs and aircraft movements at the airport. They don't want anyone to get hurt. So what happened? It says the curious bird was removed. So they sent a guy out in a truck or a lady out in a truck with a net and a cage and probably, caught the penguin. I'm sure it wasn't a very long chase, right? Once you get near the penguin, it's not going to be racing away from you at many kilometers an hour. So they got it. They got it safe and put it somewhere and took it off the runway. But it left a lasting impression. It was a very memorable incident, a very memorable thing that happened there. I'm sure it was in the newspapers and whatnot the next day. And anyone who happened to be there, travelers and airport staff, they definitely remembered it. Here's another one. Another unusual incident occurred in 2019 when a pair of little penguins were discovered under a sushi stall in Wellington. Salute to choosing a good place to make your home there, little penguins. So this is another incident. An incident is an occasion, occurrence, something happening. Often with an incident, we're talking about something that might make the news or something that might require the authorities to be involved, a police incident, a terrorist incident, an accident on the highway, a traffic incident or an accident. It's similar to accident, but it could also be a crime or something like that. So generally, if your job is to go out and help people who are suddenly in need, you're responding to incidents, whether they're fires or crimes or accidents or things like that. Or it could be something at the office, just something unusual, something that requires a little bit of help or safety or something like that. So that's what we're talking about here, these different incidents. So this is another one from a few years earlier, 2019, when someone, I imagine maybe the person who worked at this sushi stall, a small shop or maybe an outdoor place like in a night market where they sell sushi, and they heard some noises and looked under their stall, under their counter in the work area where they kind of work and cut and store all their fish, their sushi, and they found some penguins there. And the penguins obviously thought it smelled great.
Or it was a protected place, or maybe it was warm and it was the winter or something. Who knows? But the staff members found this pair of penguins underneath the sushi stall, and they had to react to this situation. Officials had to relocate the birds multiple times before they finally settled elsewhere, much to the amusement of locals. So we got officials here. Somebody probably called the Department of Natural Resources or something like that, animal control or whatever. So people came and said, okay, we've got to remove these birds and take them someplace else. But the birds just loved the smell of that sushi.
They came back.
And came waddling back to that sushi stand, or sushi stall, you could also call it. And they did this several times. That's what multiple means, many, many times. But they finally gave up. They finally thought, we're getting tired of the smell of sushi anyway, so let's just hang out someplace else. So they settled someplace else. But that was much to the amusement of locals. So local people thought that was pretty cool. It was probably in the newspapers or online with lots of pictures and things like that. They thought, oh, that's so cute. Those little penguins are trying to live in that sushi stall. This is such a great story. I can't wait to read about any updates.
Absolutely, yeah. Very interesting and highly amusing. I wonder where they ended up moving them to. All right, let's take a break here, and we'll read the third and final part of the article. Then we'll come back to chat about it.
While the species is not currently endangered, it does face threats from habitat loss, pollution, and animals like cats and dogs. Conservation programs, including those aimed at protecting nesting areas, help protect these charming birds for future generations. Little penguins may be small in stature, but their playfulness, adaptability, and unexpected encounters with people make them larger than life.
第三部分看到名词 habitat， 意思是动植物的自然生长地或是栖息地。例如 The forest is the natural habitat for a broad variety of plants and animals. 那座森林是各式各样动植物的自然栖息地。再看一个例子 Pollution is threatening the habitats of many creatures that live in the ocean. 污染正在威胁许多海洋生物的栖息地。继续看到名词 conservation， 它表示环境、文化遗产的保护、保育或是节约资源。可以说 Lance works for an organization that focuses on ocean conservation. Lance 为一家专注于海洋保护的组织工作。也可以说 Conservation programs aim to reduce the effects of human activities on the environment. 保育计划旨在减少人类活动对环境的影响。最后看到 generation 这个单字，它是名词，指世代或是同代人。举例来说 There is often a gap in understanding between older and younger generations. 老一代与年轻一代之间经常存在理解上的差距。或者 My grandparents' generation grew up without the internet. 我祖父母那一辈是在没有网络的年代长大的。
Okay, so now we're going to talk about these little penguins and how well they're doing in the world and whether or not they're going to go extinct or whatever. So here it says, while the species is not currently endangered, it does face threats from habitat loss, pollution, and animals like cats and dogs. Okay, so usually if you look up an animal on Wikipedia or whatever, it will tell you about its conservation status, okay? How well it's doing in the wild. The range is from extinct to least concern. So yeah, it's currently not endangered. I think its conservation status is least concern. We don't need to worry about it too much, but it does say it is facing habitat loss. Habitat is, of course, the area where an animal lives, usually an animal. We don't really talk about this with humans unless we're talking about humans in a scientific sense, but habitat usually refers to where animals live.
Yeah, obviously these stories that we read earlier are amusing, right? Penguins at the airport, penguins under a sushi stall, but it kind of speaks to habitat loss. They're living very close to humans, so they're having to interact with humans at airports and other places. So obviously their natural habitat is kind of getting squeezed out as cities get bigger and people start building homes out in the countryside more and more. That kind of thing. Coastal areas, of course, are very popular, of course, for development. Well, that's where these little penguins naturally will live. So this is a sign, an amusing sign, but a serious sign of a problem. And so conservation programs, including those aimed at protecting nesting areas, help protect these charming birds for future generations. So it's coming down to laws, legislations, regulations to conserve the habitats of the penguins so they don't get squeezed out or kicked out. When we talk about conservation, yeah, we're talking about conserving, keeping things safe. Preserving and conserving are fairly similar. So the preservation, the protection, or the restoration as well of the natural environment, natural ecosystems, habitats, and things like that. So basically protect the areas where the animals naturally live so we don't have to move them so they won't get squeezed out. And we're going to make national parks and put up fences in areas where people can't go or people can't develop and build on so that the penguins have places to live. We want to help protect these charming birds for future generations, for the children of the future, for our children and our children's children and our children's children's grandchildren and all that kind of thing. Generations, when we talk about that, that's parents to child and parents to their grandparents. So if you have grandparents living in a home with their children and their grandchildren, that would be 3 generations. But more generally, when we say future generations, we're just kind of saying for the people of the future, for the children, for the ones who will come after us. We don't want penguins to die out.
Yeah, you hear about different generations of people like baby boomers and Generation Z and millennials. Those are different kinds of generations, but we're not really talking about that here. We're just talking about, as Mike said, people who live in the future. And yes, these are conservation programs designed to protect them. Like here in Taiwan, I think there's some conservation programs to protect native species like the Formosan black bear, for example. Now, to finish off here, it says, little penguins may be small in stature, but their playfulness, adaptability, and unexpected encounters with people make them larger than life. So here we've got the word stature. If you're small in stature, you're just not very tall. Stature does refer to your height. It could also refer to your position. If you're a strong, powerful, influential person, you could say you have a lot of stature. I could say, for example, I appreciate the advice from someone of your stature. With somebody from your position, you're able to give me advice and things like that. But it is small in stature. It is just not very tall. and it does have an amount of playfulness, and it has this adaptability in which it can make changes in its behavior in order to live in a certain environment. It's very adaptable. It's very flexible.
That's right. Of course, if we take certain animals out of their natural environment, their natural habitat, they don't do well, but other animals do. So you can have penguins living under a sushi stall, for example, in a crowded market, quite happily, whereas other animals wouldn't do well in situations like that. And of course, there are these unexpected encounters with people, and all of this makes them larger than life. When you have an encounter with someone, it's basically meeting someone or doing something with someone. We talked about an interaction in the first day of the article, an encounter, an interaction, very similar. You could be chatting with someone, you could just share a smile with someone, a stranger as you pass on the street, or even someone you interact with at a business, just they're serving you and you're the customer. That's an encounter. So unexpected encounters, surprising interactions between the little birds and us big monkeys, us humans, these with people, in other words, makes these animals larger than life, right? So there's probably a couple dozen types of penguins out there, but little penguins might be ones we're aware of, we're more familiar with. We've seen the news stories, we've seen the cute videos. So it kind of gives them a bit of fame, a bit of notoriety. People know about them and they kind of have a soft spot for them because, of course, they are such cute little creatures. So let's do the best that we can to try to protect them and give them the happy lives that they deserve.
Okay, we're at the end of our discussion for today. Here's Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始提到 Despite their wild nature, little penguins frequently interact with humans. 尽管是野生动物，但小蓝企鹅经常与人类互动。那这边要介绍句型 despite 或是用 in spite of 加名词，逗号主词加动词，这可以表达尽管怎么样，虽然怎么样。Despite 和 in spite of 是介系词，后面是要接名词或动名词。举例来说 Margot went to work.Despite being sick， 尽管生病 Margot 还是去上班。那特别注意，如果要在 despite 或者是 in spite of 后面接子句的话，那必须要先接名词同位语，像是 the fact， 然后再接 that 子句，那就会写作 despite the fact that 怎么样，或者是 in spite of the fact that 点点点。例如 Despite the fact that he had very little experience, he was offered the job。尽管他几乎没有什么经验，他还是得到那份工作了。另外，课文里面用到动词 interact 来表达互动，那我们来学习它的字首字根。先来看 INTER 这个字首，它有 between 或者是 among 的意思，可以表达两者或两者以上之间的，或者是彼此相对应的，在什么什么中间的等等。在 interact 这个字当中，字首 inter 表示互相，字根 act 表示行动，那合在一起 interact 就可以表达互动、交流、相互影响的意思。顺便补充两个有 inter 这个字首的单字。第一个 international， 那它的字首 inter 表示在点点点之间， national 是国家的。那在国家与国家之间就表示 international 是指国际性的、国际上的。第二个补充的是 intersection， 字首 inter 表示在点点点之中， sect 这个部分表示切割， ion 是名词字尾。那我们在切蛋糕的时候常常会先切十字，再从十字的交点慢慢去分，用这样的方式也许可以联想到 intersection， 它有十字路口、交叉路口或者是相交焦点的意思。课文第二部分提到，在2019年，当时2只小蓝企鹅被发现藏身在威灵顿的一家寿司店下面，官员得重新安置它们好几次。文中是用 multiple times 来表达好几次， multiple 就是形容多个的。那这边我们来补充一下这个字首 multi， 那它可以念作 multi 或是 multi， 它表示许多、两个以上或者是好几倍。那么 multiple 它就是由 multi 许多加上 ple 表示折叠重叠，合在一起就可以去表达多个的、多种的或是多种用途的。补充一下其他带有这个字首的字，像是 multicultural 是多元文化的， multimedia 多媒体的， multipurpose 多功能的、多重用途的，还有 multinational 表示跨国的、多国的。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Interact. Many teachers think that students learn better when they interact with each other in class. Incident. Due to the unexpected incident, a lot of traffic delays occurred in the city center. Multiple. Sadie can speak multiple languages, including French, Spanish, and English. Endangered. The giant panda is an endangered species that's protected by various international laws. Habitat. The plains of Africa are the natural habitat of countless animals, from tiny insects to huge elephants. Conservation. The international organization works on the conservation of historical buildings by fixing old structures to keep them in good condition. Generation. Younger generations are typically more familiar with newer technologies than their parents and grandparents. Encounter. We had a scary encounter with a large bear during our hike.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, what fact about little penguins did you find the most interesting?
I found it interesting to learn that little penguins, although they are quite small, they travel quite far to do their hunting out into the big, scary, deep ocean, and also the fact that they're nocturnal. They hunt at night. I would never expected a small animal like that to feel so safe in the dark waters of the deep ocean, but I guess that's when the bigger, scarier animals are all sleeping.
Well, I think it's cool that little penguins tend to interact with humans. They're not really afraid of humans. Lots of animals in the animal kingdom are very wise and they keep their distance from humans, but in this case, little penguins kind of come up close to humans. Hopefully they don't suffer for that behavior. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.